This lesson is on photo embroidery. The learning goal is I can decorate a photograph using embroidery. Let's look at the definition of the word embroidery. Embroidery is the art of decorating fabric or other materials with designs stitched with thread or yarn using a needle. In the second box, some symbols of embroidery is an embroidery hoop, which is the circular object, fabric, a needle, and a piece of thread called embroidery floss. In the third box, you see 3 examples of embroidery. There's a picture of embroidery on the back of a jean jacket. There's a hoop that is embroidered with some stitches. And then on the bottom, you see a photograph that is decorated with embroidery. In the fourth box, I have 2 non-examples of embroidery. Sewing is not the same thing as embroidery. Sewing is when you use a needle and thread to stitch together 2 or more pieces of fabric. So you're connecting the fabric. When you use embroidery, you're just decorating it. Also knitting. Knitting is not the same thing as embroidery. Knitting is when you're taking yarn and you're creating fabric, kind of like weaving, but using needles. So sewing and knitting are not the same thing as embroidery. In today's lesson, we are going to add embroidery to a photograph. So before we start, you need to ask your parents to help you find a photograph that you can embroider. So it needs to be a photograph that isn't too important because you might mess up. But if you embroider a photograph because it's so thick, you won't need an embroidery hoop or fabric. So find a photograph. I have one of me when I was younger. It looks like I'm at my aunt's house hitting a piñata. So I thought this was a good photograph to add some stitching, some line designs on it. Now, you need a needle and some embroidery floss. And once you put the needle in the floss, you'll see that you'll just start from the back of your photograph and you'll poke through, and then you're going to add a stitch by going from the front to the back of the photograph. And as you can see right now, I have 1 pink stitch. Then I'm going to go from the back and I'm going to poke up through, and then I'm going to pull it. When you pull it, don't pull too tight though. You don't have to put a knot in the back as long as you don't pull hard. And then I created another stitch by going to the back. And now you'll see that I'll flip it over, poke through the front, pull the thread, and then create a stitch by poking the needle to the back. This is called a running stitch or straight stitch. When you get to the end of the string, you have several options. You can just leave a little tail and cut it and you don't have to tie a knot or anything. Unless you pull the string's not going to come out. Okay. You can, like what I'm doing here is just tying a double knot, but that's a habit of mine. It really doesn't make too much of a difference if you know that you're not going to pull the string out. A useful tool to use is a threader, and that's what I'm using right now. It helps you to get the embroidery floss through the needle. And the next stitch that I'm going to show you is called a back stitch. So I'm going to start from the back and thread to the front, leave a tail, and then I'm going to create a basic stitch. Just move forward a little bit and then poke it through the back. And then to do a back stitch, when you get back to the front, I'm going to do it right here. You're going to go back to the previous stitch and go through that hole, and you'll see that the stitches are connected. A back stitch helps to create a solid line, whereas the basic stitch, you have the space in between. So the only difference between a regular stitch and a back stitch is that when you stitch the needle up to the front of the photo, when you're looking at the front of the photo, and here I'm doing it again right here, you're going to go backwards to the other stitch. Now here I went ahead and skipped it. I added some space because I wanted my lines to be a little bit longer, and I just use a pencil to draw the line that might help you make a straighter line. So now I'm going to do a back stitch, and you'll see now I'm going back to the hole right there, and I'm going down. And sometimes your threads get a little tangled. Just pull it. As soon as you see it, pull it. Don't think, oh, it'll be fine, because it will get tangled up. So if you get any tangles, stop and fix your strings. So then I'm going to skip some space, poke through from the back to the front of the photograph, and here I'm doing another back stitch. And you'll see that I created a solid line. Now I'm going to add a different color. So I have my green thread now, and I'm going to add some more basic stitches, and I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the video so that you can see the process. I want to show you another option. When you finish up a string, you can see that I'm taking my needle and just sliding it through some other stitches in the back. And you can do that and then cut a piece off, and that will help secure the threads in the back as well. And the back will start looking messy, and that's okay. What you have to pay attention to is what the front looks like, because that's the part that you will see. Now I'm going to add a little sun in the side, and I'm going to use a back stitch, and I'm drawing the circle in the back to help me see where it's going to be. Something that I noticed right here at this point is that when I turned the photograph over, I couldn't see the outline of the sun anymore. And I wanted to make sure that I had stitched it on the line. So a way to fix that was that I traced the sun, but I pushed it down a little bit harder. Because when you do that, and I kind of used the light to help you see, right there where the light is, you can see the outline of the circle. And that is going to help me find where the outline is. To create the sun, I will be using a back stitch. So if you are ever creating a line that curves, a back stitch is a good stitch to use. And there you have it, and there is your photo with embroidery. And if you've made it this far, thank you for being patient. I absolutely love embroidery. It does take a lot of patience. If you need any help with anything, reach out to me. I'll be glad to help. And I hope you have fun with this one.